Good morning, Amy. How are you?
Good morning, Alexis. I am lovely on this fine October day.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like fall here for sure. And I'm very excited. I have my full moon shirt on. I'm ready for this full moon in a couple of days. We're recording this on October 18th, which is a big day because we have Jupiter and Mercury stationing direct. And there's just this forward motion that we've been kind of waiting for months for is finally here. Like we have this forward motion, we have a very activating, fiery full moon, and we're towards the end of the year. So there's all of this kind of shifting happening. So it's very exciting. Very also can be overwhelming and like a little disorienting. But it's good. I'm excited to talk about all of it.
It's great. It's so good to feel this forward motion, even if the forward motion is moving us towards the intensity that is in an increase and is going to continue to climb. I spoke to a really lovely, really deep woman who does human design. And in the human design world, like we're looking at a threshold of 2027. And like we're moving towards like our decisions for the next 3 months, I guess 2.5, since we're halfway through October, are going to be really, really impactful for us moving forward. So yay, Mercury. Let's go finish Libra here because Mercury is at 10 degrees Libra. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then we've got Jupiter in Aquarius. And now that he is stationing direct to move forward, there's going to be a lot of truths that are revealed. There's going to be a lot of reveals. There's going to be a lot of expansion of things that we thought we knew, but we didn't know the whole story. We're going to start to get the bigger picture and see what the whole story is.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really, if you're familiar with your chart, you can look at where those are in your chart. So you can look at 10 degrees of Libra with Mercury, especially in Aquarius. You can look at where Aquarius is, what house Aquarius is, because that's a theme we've been working with all year. So if we feel into Jupiter, Jupiter is in a sign for about a year. And he and Saturn moved into Aquarius basically the start of 2021. And him stationing direct is a big shift of basically themes we've been working all year on, really starting to have some forward motion, really starting to have clarity. Because we had to have the whole year to really see pieces, let pieces go, do the deep diving of what do we want. And so it's really interesting when you look at your chart, like what area that is happening for you. And if you aren't familiar with astrology, I'm sure you can just feel into what area in your life is expanding, what area of your life is kind of calling for a lot of attention. So that's a big one to look at where Aquarius is. And then specifically, you can look at where 22 degrees of Aquarius is for you, especially if you have, planets in Aquarius, you can kind of see what's going on in that area. But when you feel into it, like I said, you don't even have to know astrology to feel Jupiter brings expansion. So all year there's been an expansion happening. And when he was retrograde, it was looking within. How can we expand our inner capacity, our inner kind of strength to then go forward and actually, put into work all the things that we want, which is Saturn as well. So Saturn is also in Aquarius and he's stationed direct earlier in the month. And he is that work. He's like, let's carpenter, like actually make things happen. So both of those are now direct, which is really big. You can feel into as we close out the year, okay, we get to actually see pieces, we get to actually put them into effect. And this all just happened. So we're still in that, like, things are still like, still shifting and still like finding their ground.
Yes, the Titanic is not very maneuverable. It's going to take a while to slow down and turn. Yes. And I love that it's 22 degrees.
Yeah.
Just with 2022 coming up, it's like this nice little encapsulated degree preview, because I know there's a lot of 22 degree aspects in 2022. And there's a lot of juiciness around this 22 piece. So if you're a journaler, maybe just make some notes about what's going on as Jupiter stations direct in your life. So that when we're on next year in 2022, talking about all the 22-degree happenings, you can look back and be like, oh, there was this preview.
Yeah, for sure. And also feeling into, we are at the, we had 4 planets that were stationing direct in October. So all within a very close time period. And now on October 18th, we finally have Mercury and Jupiter, which are the last 2. So we had Pluto first, then Saturn, now Jupiter and Mercury. And so as you feel into all 4 of those that have now shifted, that are now direct, they're forward moving. That's a big shift, because we have Mercury retrograde a couple times a year. So when Mercury, if it's just Mercury stationing direct, like, happens all the time, but to have it with Jupiter and then to have it on the back end of Saturn and Pluto all within a few weeks, like, it's big energy moving forward. And then you take a look at the full moon that we have 2 days later. That's a very activating, fiery moon. And Mars is very involved in all of this. So, right, like, you take into effect, like, okay, all of these planets will retrograde and station direct throughout, throughout the year. It happens. But then you add on, they're all happening together. Also, Mars is very involved, and it happens right before a full moon in Aries that kind of opens an eclipse window. It's very activating. It's like, this doesn't happen all the time. So,
hello, mistress of the understatement.
Yes. The fact that also, as Jupiter stations direct, he is trining both the sun and Mars. That is very, like, illuminating and activating, right? So that expansion we were talking about, there's an extra kick with the sun and Mars bringing that energy. And then the full moon 2 days later is in Aries, which is Mars rules Aries, and he's opposite the moon. So he's over there with the sun in Libra, opposing this full moon. So it's very activating, very fiery, more so than normal, right? We get a full moon in Aries every year. And it's also squaring Pluto, that full moon. So it's quite, it's quite activating. And you can feel with full moons, they bring a fullness, they bring, on their own, they bring this peak, this illumination. Add in all of that, it's a lot.
And it's worth mentioning that the moon is going to be conjunct Eris, the goddess of creative chaos and discord. Oftentimes our little human selves view chaos as really scary because we can't see the bigger cosmic pattern in the chaos. And we don't realize that the most amazing creations often come out of chaos. So Eris is hanging out up there with the moon. Well, the moon is opposing her twin brother, Mars, down in Libra. And all of this is T-squared to Pluto. So we've got action, we've got chaos, we've got, power struggles. And we've got our major personal bodies, the sun and the moon, bringing in and just shining all of this light. And it feels like this pressure into the center. And like, what's going to be forged under this pressure? Like, can you let the pushing in break away what doesn't serve you? Like, let it fall away so that, like, your really crystalline highest self is left. Because we're messy right now, people. Messy.
Yeah. And I think one of the beautiful things about the timing of this full moon is it comes after all of these planets have stationed direct. It comes after Mercury retrograde. So you may already feel like, okay, there are some, I may not know the whole picture, like the big picture, but I can start to see like there's been these clues of like, oh yeah, that's right. Like things are working in my favor, even if I can't see it when I'm in it. That there's a beauty in this. I feel like if this full moon happened like a week or two ago, like we would have been way more unprepared for it. And right, it would all be perfect. Like we would just maybe, have a few more tantrums, have a few more breakdowns. But I think the timing of this coming out of all of these retrogrades, like we have all this forward motion. I feel like we have this like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to look at it. And not to say that we won't have our moments. And of course, I think it's going to be really important to nurture yourself, to like get out in nature, take an Epsom salt bath, like do all the things you need to do because it is activating and fiery. But there's a beauty to the timing of it, that it comes when we can actually see a little bit. Because when we're in all that retrograde space, like try as we might, we just can't. Like we just can't. We get little tiny pieces, but there's a beauty in the timing of it that it's after we have come out of these retrogrades, we get to really see. And so if we work with it and ask the questions and kind of eyes wide open, there's a beauty in that.
Yeah. I'm like definitely feeling the moon. She has been out and she has been juicy and bright. And there's such a pull. And this Mars activation piece with the direct forward motion of so much that, with the exception of Mercury, have been retrograde since the spring, early summer in the Northern Hemisphere, fall, early winter in the Southern Hemisphere. And it feels like this call and this pull, in my system. Like that's how I'm feeling it. Even just this morning already, I'm like, oh, it's time to take action on this thing that literally up until this morning has just been like hovering, waiting to have me meet it. Like I've known it's been there, but all this morning it's been like, do this, do that, do that, do that. Like get this thing now is ready. It's the calling in and really having the discernment to pay attention around where we're called to take action and where we're called to wait, and watching that expand and blossom and grow. I'm really excited about all of this. Like, I just want to like do my little happy dance thing that I do. I think this is great.
Yeah. And another piece, also, I apologize. There's construction going on. So if there's any background noise, of course, just as we started this talking about this full moon in Aries, the construction comes by. But another piece with the full moon in Aries is it's squaring the natal Pluto for the United States. So where Pluto was when the Declaration of Independence was signed was at 27 degrees of Capricorn. And this full moon is at 27 degrees of Aries. So it's exactly squaring that natal Pluto for the US, which we will have our exact Pluto return in February 2022. So that also is really shining a light on some big collective pieces, particularly in the US. But, we talk about the ripple, how it, it all affects everything. And the fact that opens kind of the eclipse energy, because we have the next full moon will be an eclipse. So there's some really big pieces, both collectively and personally, that this full moon in Aries really opens.
There's a big ask around what is your personal relationship with power? And are you working at pushing your sense of control outside of you? Or are you really having the discernment to recognize your control ends where your body ends, baby? Like that is it. Our sovereignty and our personal power is an interior thing over really meeting ourselves. around the exploration we're willing to do, taking ourselves to our growth edges, and how honest are we with ourselves and the people we love? Because honesty is so often a power game. And there is just this like really honing your discernment around your relationship with power, your relationship with money. How's your grieving going? That's the other thing that's coming in really, really loud. Pluto, our friend Pluto, is the god of the underworld. We have been collectively, globally dealing with a tremendous amount of death. I have sat through in-person funerals. I have sat through live streamed YouTube funerals that have just, and how are we doing with our grieving? Have you taken time to grieve the activities that you have maybe missed, that you haven't gone back to, or that are never going to be the same again? Things are not going to be the same. Have you grieved normal? Have you grieved what normal was back in 2019? Like really felt the loss of that. Feeling those things and taking the time to grieve and move those feelings through our physical body is going to lighten your load. It really, really is. As hard as those feelings are to feel, and as hard as it is to stick with it, to be in it, it's going to lighten you, and it's going to ease you, and it's going to open you up for more of your own personal truth, your own personal power, your own growth and expansion. We're back to our friend Jupiter. So really, really getting clear, like letting this light, this moon shine on your emotions and your grief around what's gone and what's dead. Because it can feel like a conflict, or we can use it as an opportunity to overcome.
Yeah, and Pluto also is, you touched on like power and power dynamics. So you can feel that collectively, what that means. And also personally, we also have Mars in Libra, who it's a sign of relationships. So you might feel this personally in your relationships of Mars is great at triggering. He's like that activator. He'll trigger, he'll like highlight this little like bit that makes you a little bit uncomfortable so that you can see what's there. And feeling into Pluto also there with this full moon, like those unhealthy power dynamics of where you feel like, you know, you need to be right, or where your ego kind of comes in and has this expectation or this belief. Like, how can that inform you? And, you know, when we always have that ability to go within and look at, okay, what is this showing me about myself? There's some really big pieces with relationship that can come up because we have Mars in Libra. And then also with the Pluto, there's, when you feel into Pluto is in Capricorn, there's that power piece that we talked about, but it's really this unearthing, like the depths, like what has been hiding under the surface for a while that really it's time to see it. So both of those, just giving a little bit more on Mars and Pluto, like,
yeah, where are you not taking action on like owning your power and speaking your truth? Like, where are you hiding information?
Yeah, and then those two will square off exactly 2 days later. So if you miss any messages or you're still just like, yeah, what's going on? 2 days later, on October 22nd, Mars squares Pluto exactly at 24 degrees. Mars in Libra and Pluto in Capricorn. So don't worry, like it'll come up because they're in a square for that whole week, but really like it hits exact that day. Mm-hmm. So over those few days, and we always talk about this, it's not like a one and done, like it's only on this day. There's always that buffer. But don't worry, you won't miss messages because the two will be very much squaring off 2 days after that full moon.
And Capricorn and Libra are cardinal signs. They're initiators. Libra, an air initiator, and Capricorn, an earth initiator. So there's this earth, this 3D space, this like computer and the headphones and the 3D space, and the air, which is our thoughts. So keeping in mind that there can be some initiation, some igniting of earthly thought pieces in this.
Yeah. Yeah. And lots of new beginnings. Like, even if it's like you said, there's something that's been kind of like hovering in the works. Like, I've had this idea or this thing that's kind of been there. It may be time for some of those things to actually kick off and start anew, even if they've been, you know, a thought or kind of hovering. There's a lot of new beginning energy with all of this cardinal. Yeah, we have the cardinal full moon, and then we have this energy of Mars and Pluto in cardinal signs. And we're moving into this eclipse energy, which eclipses are always really big times of shifts, of new beginnings, also big letting go of like, we're just in this portal of like this whole new chapter that we're going into. And so if we feel into that as well, we'll have our first, well, it's our third of the year, but first of the season, full moon eclipse. Yeah, it's a lunar eclipse. So it'll be a full moon eclipse on November 19th. And that's a full moon in Taurus. So it's an eclipse in Taurus, which brings us, it's kind of this bridge because the nodes will shift in January. So we've had the North and South node in Gemini and Sagittarius. They stay in a sign for about a year and a half. So as we feel into this eclipse, it's kind of the first preview of what we're moving into for the next year and a half. So we have that Taurus eclipse. It kind of gives us this little sneak peek of what that's going to look like as the nodes begin to shift. So it's kind of like this in-between place. But when you feel into that as well, that is a big shift of energy, right? So that whole idea of like new beginnings with this cardinal energy is really true. And then when we get to the eclipses, sometimes there's big pieces we have to let go, because with any new beginning, you need to make space, let things go, and also move forward. So that first eclipse will be a North Node eclipse. So that gives us that kind of insight and that forward motion of where we want to go. And then the second eclipse we have in December will be a South Node eclipse, like really shedding all of the stuff that we need to move forward. So just feeling into that, those will be the last two eclipses of this year. Like, it's pretty big. We're moving into some really big shifting energy. And just the fact that we're in all of this big cardinal energy right now feels really potent.
Oh, huge. Yeah. I just want to do a full body dance. I'm so excited about this whole like year end.
Yeah, there's a lot shifting. And I think it's also that we're ready for, though. Like, we've been in such an internal space for so long that it's really like, I think most of us are ready, you know?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So then on October 23rd, the sun enters Scorpio. So we begin to shift out of Libra season, which is very much about the balance and the partnerships and all of the things that we've been in for the month of, and it's been a big retrograde time. Most of Libra season has been this big retrograde state of more so about ourselves in relationship, and more so ourselves in our inner balance and how we can bring balance to our lives where we're really a little bit off. That's been a big, it's all been retrograde inward, like looking within. So we move into Scorpio season in this forward motion kind of time. And Scorpio is a deep dive. So Scorpio is the depths. Scorpio is, I love Scorpio. It's like nothing, you can't hide anything, because it's like we're diving in, like we're going in, we're going to look at it. And so that comes when we're in all of this forward motion, which is interesting because Scorpio to me is like a more internal kind of like going deep into these caves, like going within. But it comes with this, all this forward motion and all this cardinal energy and this, you know, initiatory energy that we are in. So it's an interesting dynamic there that as we move into Scorpio season, we have a lot of this forward motion and this forward energy.
Love it. Yeah, it's so, so good. Scorpio to me is radical truth. That deep dive into, am I being honest with myself? And like that truth always has to come to us first. As so often we expect those around us to be honest with us. And if they see that we can't be honest with ourselves, why are they going to assume we can handle the truth? Because radical honesty to me is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It is one of my core values, is radical honesty in my commitment to growth and my commitment to soul and my commitment to live the best I can live while I get to wear this particular meat suit. And Scorpio is really going to be like taking us in. And the sun in Scorpio, like the sun is down there with us. That light shining and warming, that life-giving sun energy is with us in the depths. So really welcome being held by that.
Yeah, it's like it's shining a light, you know, on all of these this like inner depths. I think of it like I always see like a cave and like these just like depths that you go into. But it's shining a light on that. It's bringing illumination to that. And then a few days later, so October 26th, we have Venus square Neptune. And I also feel like after having that Aries full moon, having the sun in a water sign will probably be supportive. It feels like there's like this cleansing and this like, it is water too. So it's like, you know, the depths of the water, like we're taking a bath and we're diving in. So that feels supportive. And then we have Venus and Neptune. So Neptune is in Pisces, another water sign, and Venus is in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is very like forward thinking. It's that, you know, higher mind, the philosopher, all of that. So we have Venus squaring Neptune on the 26th. So that brings, and I love when Venus and Neptune come together. I always talk about this, that they're both, Venus is love and relationships and like that earthly sensual piece. And Neptune is the spiritual and the higher octave of love. When they come together, it's always really beautiful. Even if what comes up doesn't feel so good, it's always really like just that, just like that depth of love. So when they're squaring off, it can always bring up challenges or where we're maybe in resistance to or blocking ourselves from abundance and love. So those two square off, like I said, on October 26th.
And just an invitation, like to feel that in your body. Maybe rewind this and just close your eyes and listen to Alexis again talk about Venus and Neptune and their energies, and just feel it in your body. What it is that person to person, I love myself, love of Venus, and the bigger spiritual love of Neptune. And that invitation is just like an embody this invitation. Because yes, sitting here and listening to you and just letting your words like roll over me, I'm like, oh yeah, that feels really lovely. And it feels really soft and nourishing. Because while Venus is at home in Taurus, which is an earth sign, and she's in Sagittarius when this happens, which is a fire sign, Venus always feels very cleansing to me. And Neptune's he's the Lord of the oceans, people. Come on. So I'm recalling the invitation for Epsom salt baths. Burn beautiful candles. Like really, really nourish yourself. Find your fuzzy blankets. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're moving into the cold. Like nourish and fill up your personal space with things that are beautiful and useful and support your higher frequency.
Yeah, and there's a really beautiful alchemy of
Mm-hmm.
having Venus in a fire sign and Neptune in a water sign, like those opposites of fire and water.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a, like, to me, it's such a feminine masculine alchemy. And the image that came was like sitting in a bath with candles around you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how yummy is that? Like, how beautiful is that? Because you have that soft nurturing of the water and you have the activating of the fire and the flame. Yeah, really good. Really
So
good.
good. So good. So much good here.
So good. Yeah. And as you feel into that energy, 2 days later, Venus sextiles Jupiter. So, meaning they'll be 60 degrees apart. And Venus, in an aspect to Jupiter, is really like the word that comes is abundance. Like both of
Mm-hmm.
those, I think about
Yeah.
abundance. And to have
Game
them be
on.
together, yes, it's really expanding like our beliefs and
Mm-hmm.
how do you believe that you're worthy of having everything that you want, right? Because often we're the only ones preventing us
Yeah.
from, it's already ours, right? I heard someone say recently, he does a practice of calling in what he wants, and he'll say to himself, it's already mine, that time just hasn't caught up, right? And so what are the pieces that are preventing that from happening, right? Without judgment, without like getting like all crazy and grabby.
Mm-hmm.
That day to me feels like a really beautiful time of abundance to just receive the abundance.
Yeah.
And then also, well, you'll probably feel it as Jupiter's now direct. Where are the places that you doubt?
Mm-hmm.
Where are the places that you don't believe that you are supported?
Or that you're not enough in some way, shape, manner, or form. Really recognizing that we are so enough that from the moment of our conception until we make the transition, we die from the world of the womb and we're born into this world, our needs are all met. We're warm and we're safe and we're fed. And we're in an environment where we're met and held. It's when we show up here, we get all kinds of crazy ideas that we're somehow not enough, that we're somehow that it's other people's jobs, that it's their sole imperative to see us rather than that it's our sole imperative to see us. And just bathing in I love the it's already mine and time hasn't caught up, because I was having a conversation this week also with somebody he was like, oh, I'm talking about this thing as if it happened already. And I'm like, perfect. Talk about it as if it is yours. Like really own and embody the energy of this is mine, because yes, exactly what you said. Time hasn't caught up yet. Don't get caught up in this linear timeline. Time is not linear.
No, and that's super powerful. Like I have had experiences where I have like been in that place of like, I already have it and literally it shows up the next day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not kidding. It's very powerful.
Really powerful.
And that's big. That's big because I feel like we aren't a lot of the time in this, oh, it'll happen in the future. I don't have it yet. I'm waiting, I'm wanting. And that waiting, wanting, like that's not a great place to be. Of course we can want, and
Mm-hmm.
but there's a different energy when you hold that it's already mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
it's a frequency change.
yes,
To go from it's going to happen out there, that's one frequency, to it is right now.
Yeah.
Two different frequencies. Pick yours. Pick anywhere in between, but pick yours.
And you can feel into like what that does in your body when you say like, okay, it's already mine. There's a relaxing and a softening rather than this anxiety of when is it going to happen, right? Like you can feel the difference. So exactly, it's a vibration and it's very potent. So that day, just have a lot of fun with that. Venus aspecting Jupiter on the 28th, October 28th. Yeah, have lots of fun with that because that is a great day of abundance. in the days.
It's going to be super delicious. That's when we're scheduled to film our podcast with our newest guest.
Yes. More to come.
More to come.
Yeah, that feels like a good day.
It's a good day.
Then October 30th, we have a lot going on. So we have Vesta in Scorpio, trining Neptune in Pisces. So double water there, Vesta and Neptune. So that's a really beautiful energy of that inner space. Vesta, I always think of that like inner flame. She's the keeper of the flame within. And Neptune is that spiritual. He is that, he can see beyond the veil of this world. And Scorpio also to me has a very like mysterious quality. So you feel into those two, like that's a great energy of, especially, meditating or going on a shamanic journey, like really being in that inner space. And it's the unseen. It's that like the water that we can't see. And Neptune Pisces is such a like infinite,
expansive. Vesta also happens to be conjunct the asteroid of Magdalene when this is all happening. So I want to bring her in. We're working with Vesta this month, actually in my women's circle. And so in working with Vesta, my child was kind enough to bring home a cold. In working with Vesta, Vesta is about the day-to-day, moment-to-moment sacredness. Vesta isn't often like, she doesn't have festivals. She doesn't have a temple because she has a place in every home as their center hearth, the center flame that did all the cooking, that did all the heating, that like provided for the family on a day-to-day basis. So Vesta is very, very much the sacred moment-to-moment daily rituals. And the depths that we can, like, as she's in Scorpio, she is the depths that we could bring by bringing in the sacredness that is all around us. Like, we are sitting in a vast wealth of sacred, holy, divine energy. And how are we meeting that in the day to day? Which it feels like it's so important to bring in, like, she and Magdalene are exactly conjunct. The 28th, the 29th, the 30th, and the 31st. So that big Mary Magdalene energy, that when Magdalene is in her light, in her highest place, she is sacred union. And when she is in her shadow and her fall and her detriment, she is division. So bringing union, bringing all of who and what we are, all of our humanity, all of our divinity, all of our presence, to the sacredness of kissing our kids good morning, stretching and moving and being in our bodies, preparing our food, driving and being on the road, doing our work in the world. All of these things are sacred. And there is such a call to reclaim the sacredness of that and to tear down the structures that tell us that the sacred only happens if there's some dude telling you that this is a sacred moment. Fuck no. Enough of that. Done. Okay, I'm done. That's all. End rant.
No, it's perfect. I was literally just this morning recommended the book Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson to a friend. And we were having a whole conversation on exactly this. And I think this piece of what these two together, Vesta and Magdalene, are bringing, of that is just as sacred as doing anything, going to a temple or doing anything. Yeah. And almost more so to me. Mm-hmm. I remember always as a child, I was brought up Catholic, and in school we would be taught it was really important to go to church every Sunday. And luckily my parents were not strict, Catholics. They sent me to Catholic school, and, we all had faith. And I always considered myself to have a very close connection with, you know, at that time it was God, right? Whatever word there is for whatever is beyond.
Pick your word, any word.
Pick your word, any word, right? Universe, God, spirit, God, goddess, source, right? Soul, higher self, all of these words fit. But I remember always feeling that I had like a daily communication with this source, like beyond me. And I didn't have to go to church. And actually, when I was in church, I felt it less. So to me, it never made sense. Like, why would I have to go to church? And why is not going to church every Sunday such a sin? And you can't accept the Eucharist if you don't. And it was all of these pieces that, and it's funny that you're bringing this up because it all came up this morning. And Magdalene, to me, was the piece that was missing from all of it. The piece that the true message of all of this is it's all within yourself. And how scary, and I understand now how, like, you know, if you're trying to make a business and you're trying to have some power and control, you don't want people to know that. You don't want people to, it's all within you. Like that, you know, derails their whole system. So, and Vesta to me, like feeling into that, the sacredness in the home, like that you can have that sacredness in every daily act, how important that is, that those two together, I just love it. Tied into the whole conversation I had this morning with a friend. Like we were just getting into all of it. And I was like, you have to read Mary Magdalene Revealed because it takes a whole different perspective on Christianity from, you know, those of us who were brought up Catholic, Christian, any of it. Because I always remember questioning that. Like, why would I have to go to church to feel any, you know, like any connection to God or source? Like I have that every day. I talk all the time. I'm always in communication.
Yeah. My spiritual awakening happened when I was like 9 in the woods. And, you know, I had a whole conversation in which like, I'm like, this doesn't feel holy to me. This doesn't feel sacred to me. There's nothing about this Catholicism that my parents are forcing me into that feels nurturing or sacred or holy or aligned with any level of universal love. So yeah, I feel you. It is, and it also feels like, you know, the more you dive into it and how it has been formed into a structure that is about political power. It's about the consolidation of power and wealth and the acquisition of people's personal sovereignty. No more.
Yeah. And this is a big, like, you can feel this collectively. Like, you don't even have to, right, get into the details. Like, you can feel that this personal sovereignty piece is really being highlighted. Also, that day, the sun squares Saturn, right? So you have this Vesta, Magdalene, Neptune piece, this inner, like, right, sovereignty. Then you have the sun squaring Saturn, right? Which Saturn can be the old structures. He can also be the new structures that we just haven't created yet, but it's really bringing illumination to all of the old structures that no longer work. And it's been coming up because, you know, right, Saturn has been doing his thing all year, but there's this extra illumination. And I think particularly around this inner sovereignty that we get with Vesta, Magdalene, Neptune. And we also get Mars moving into Scorpio that day.
So there's some stuff happening.
Mars is home in Scorpio. So he in Libra, where he's been for, you know, a little while, he's not so comfortable in Libra. He's the warrior. He like wants to go. In Scorpio, though, there's a power where he's like, yes, I can, you know, I can wield my power now because I've been in this like
gotta make nice
harmony place, which is beautiful, right? There's been many, many lessons. We have to have all of it. But Mars in Scorpio is home, right? His two home signs are Aries and Scorpio. So there's a big shift that day around power dynamics, around where is the unclean parts of that coming to the surface, right? And with the sun illuminating it, there's this like, seems like this volcano of like,
oh yeah, Even I was like, okay, this is a lovely example. I am extra fiery today. This new moon that's happening in a couple of days is hitting my south node, my Mercury, my communication, and my Venus. Like it is in there hitting a lot of stuff in my natal chart. And this is an excellent example for all of you who are like, how does this apply to us in the real world? Like, take a hot look here at me. Like, we've got this fiery activating full moon, and I'm like, rah! So, really paying attention to where you're at is going to help you really start to embody how this stuff shows up. You don't need to have your chart memorized. Just pay attention.
Yeah. Just have
to be present.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just, I mean, we say it all the time. Like, you really just, if you're open and curious and listening, the pieces will come, right? Yeah. You do have to have an openness to be willing to see, because we don't always want to see the things when they first come. And that's okay. That's usually just, you know, it's a good marker of like, it triggers me or I don't like it. Great. That's exactly
perfect
the thing to look at. Then we close out the month with, on the 31st, Venus conjunct Juno. So feeling into all of this, you know, we're moving on of Libra season now. So at this point we're in Scorpio season, all the stuff that's happened the month prior in relationship, in, you know, all of these interactions with others. I feel like there's when you feel into Sagittarius, there's like a purifying, there's almost this like final burning away. So you have Venus and Juno conjunct, and Juno she is the goddess of marriage and contracts. And it doesn't have to just be in your partnership, right? Or a romantic relationship. It can be in any partnerships, any contracts. Even that word sometimes can be triggering for people, like contracts. I just use it like you can have a contract with anything or anyone for a period of time, right? Like you can have contracts with places, with your home, with people who come into your life, teachers, maybe they're there for a year, and then, right, then it's time to move on. And when we can honor the container of a contract, and we, you know, you get that feeling. You don't usually go in knowing like, okay, it starts on January 1st and it ends on, you know, October 3rd. Like it's not that. But you feel at a point like this feels complete. It feels like I've gotten everything I can out of this. And now it's time to let go. And when we don't let go, things can get a little messy. So to me, that day feels like we've been through so much these past few months, and especially in Libra season and all these pieces, but really the whole year, that when Venus and Juno come together, there's this final burning away of what are the contracts that just, those last pieces, just they're ready. They're ready.
Yeah.
And also the new contracts, right? Because it's there's just definitely this purifying energy, I feel. But Sagittarius is also that explorer, that like, you know, where is that next new frontier? So that day, that's how we close out the month.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And keeping in mind that we're closing out the month on a day of the year when the veils are known to be thin. Like we've got culture celebrating the Day of the Dead and Samhain, and, you know, what we now view as Halloween, All Saints Day. Like the veils are thin in this time of the year. And so really looking at all of your contracts, like, do you have contracts that are across space and time? Do you have contracts with those that have passed? Can you shift your contracts and ask those ancestors that have passed to step in as your, you know, I call mine my spirit posse, your ascended masters and your guides, a source of wisdom to call in your gifts and just really heal and release woundings. Like those are contracts because they're lessons.
Yeah. And the timing of that, like the day that it falls on, right? it feels like there's a big ancestral piece too.
Yeah, there's a big ancestor piece towards the end of this month.
Yes. Like releasing that no longer serves, because there are gifts, right? Like I feel like that's what we're here for, is to embrace all the gifts, to not forget, to remember, to keep remembering more and more that we can. But there's so many pieces that our ancestors went through. Like we don't have to keep going through that, right? Like they went through it so that we don't have to. But it's in our DNA. We hold on to the memories, the traumas, all of it. So there's a big, big chance to release that, to let that go. And yeah, the timing of that, with that Venus Juno on that day, feels like there's this really big ancestral piece too.
Yeah, I was speaking to a younger client last week about some family patterns she's watching come up, and helping her to discover that they're family patterns, and that she has a choice as to whether or not she continues to participate in them. And that deciding she's not going to participate in them doesn't mean that she loves her people any less. It's that we all have the opportunity to be like, oh no, this stops with me. Like, this is the mess that my ancestors lived through. I see I'm working really hard to recreate it. And I don't have to do that. I don't have to do it to me. And I don't have to do it to anybody that moves forward from my line. We all have the option to stop it right here, right now, and harvest the gifts. Like this full moon is called the hunter's moon. And when tribal societies would go out and hunt on this moon, it was to harvest food for the winter months in the in the northern hemisphere. Like, this is the hunter's moon. We did the harvest moon, where they gathered in the plants and the crops, and they take the month to process them. And this moon is the hunter's moon, where they go and gather up the food, more food stuffs to nourish and feed and support. So there is nourishment. There's gifts that this moon and these energies through the end of the month are really going to be calling in. And Juno Vesta are like, okay, it's time. Like, what are the gifts? Pack those puppies up. What are you letting go of? Let's return it to the earth. Let's return that energy to be recycled and turned into something nourishing and life-giving.
Yeah. And to not get attached to anything. Like, I think the seasons teach us that, right? Like that every year is a little bit different. You know, when you have a harvest, like the weather, everything, there's a difference, and nothing is forever. Like, you harvest for the next season, and then there's a cycle that continues. And there's a piece with harvesting the gifts of not being too attached either. Like, it's almost like a tool belt. Like, you have all these gifts in here, but also not getting too attached and being like, you know, this is it. That feels like another piece too, of just this like appreciation for the flow and the things come and go, and also for just this unattachment to it. Like, you can have reverence for, and like it can inform you, and it can be very much a part of like that tool belt, the tools in the tool belt. But it also, there's an unattachment to it. There's a not clinging onto, which I think that can come with these ancestral pieces of like, it is mine, and this unhealthy attachment to these pieces. Because I think one of the really beautiful things to feel into is you are unique. You are a very unique being who, like, you have your own pieces that you get to take all of what you've learned from both sides of your families, right? Because you have two ancestral lines coming together. Like, that hasn't happened, right? Like, those two are coming together in you, but also you have your own unique pieces that are unique apart from that. Yeah. And so, like, not to get too attached to any of it. So for what that's worth.
Yeah. Just don't get too attached to anything, and be in flow. Like that, we've a lot of what we've talked about has had Scorpio as a water sign. Like, be in the flow of Scorpio season.
Love Scorpio season.
Whoop.
Beautiful.
And we have some other little kind of preview pieces that we wanted to touch on, right?
Just feeling into like the wrapping up the year.
Yeah. There were some items we wanted to kind of just give a little like, hey,
yeah.
pay attention.
The eclipse is a big one, which we touched on. So that's coming. That, you know, we're moving into that energy of November and December, that those eclipses. So we talked about that a little bit.
The doors open Wednesday, people.
Yeah. So that first full moon, that's Aries full moon, is like a slow, we slowly walk in. And then that really potent portal is from November 19th to December 4th, where we have those, 2 weeks of really that potency of that eclipse portal. And then again, right, we have a few weeks on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to keep in mind is Saturn square Uranus is an aspect that we've been in all year. So it hits 3 major times throughout the year. So we've already been through the February was the first time. So you can feel back around February 17th, what was happening then. That was the very first, inklings of that. Then mid-June, we had the second Saturn square Uranus aspect, and we'll have another at late December. So the 24th, we get our third and final Saturn Uranus square. And when you feel into both of those, we talked about Saturn and Aquarius and how those pieces are really getting illuminated of that, how to bring things into reality, how to bring things into being. And Aquarius is very much a revolutionary sign. It's new thought, new ways of thinking. And so you feel Saturn there. That's something, right, he's been working on all year. So you can feel into those kind of like, it's a beginning, middle, and end for these aspects. Because as Uranus squares Saturn, it brings in this kind of like lightning bolt of truth, this kind of really interesting energy as those two square off. So there's that dynamic too, that we still haven't quite got to the end yet. We still have that coming in December of the final piece to that, which feels really big because we have Saturn in Aquarius and then Uranus in Taurus, which we also mentioned that that's where the nodes will be moving. So the North Node will be moving into Taurus in January. So you can feel that like December, January, as we move, like there's this big shifting energy, and also a wrapping up of some pieces from 2021 that we get to really the very end of December. We get that wrapping up piece with Saturn and Uranus.
Mm-hmm. It feels like there is a bringing in of awareness of how important it is to be kind right now to yourself and others. We're in big energy. Here in the US, Neptune is in the same place he was during the Salem witch trials. I don't know if anybody thought that was a good idea. Obviously, some people did. Let's not decide we're going to demonize anybody. That is not functional. We've done that here. It doesn't work. Aries is in the same place she was when good old Chris Columbus landed here. Let's not decide that we are going to take over and bring illness to other people's worlds. Like, let's really, like, this is a personal sovereignty place. How can I meet you as an equal rather than meet you as someone I need to conquer and be in charge of? Pluto is in the same place he was during the Revolutionary War, which was a breaking with authority. Like, that's what it was. So in what ways are we bowing to external authority? And that breaks our internal sovereignty. So I want to invite everyone to like really deep kindness right now, to kindness with yourself and kindness with everyone else, because especially for those of us here in the US, and that ripples everywhere because everything is so connected. Like, be kind, be loving, be curious. Don't decide that your way is the way, because I can guarantee you your way is not the goddamn way. There is no the way. There's just your way. End rant. I'm good. I'm ranty today. That moon and that Mars are just poking at me.
And they're all really important pieces because you can feel into those really digging their feet into the like, this is the way it is. And it's just getting louder, and it's going to get louder.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, also, yeah, like doing what you need to do, connecting to the people who do support you, doing the things that are supportive and that are nourishing, because there's a lot of external pieces that are very challenging. So it's all, yeah, everything that you're bringing up is spot on and just important reminder. Yeah.
This is where I'm at today. Is